The midday sun poured through the towering windows of the Armand estate, lighting across marble floors so polished they reflected light like still water. Dust motes floated in the air, glowing softly, suspended as if time itself had slowed inside those grand walls. In that quiet, almost sacred stillness, a young housekeeper named Mara Ellington stood frozen near the open safe, her breath shallow, her fingers brushing the edge of a ledger she didn't need to touch anymore. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure it echoed through the room. She believed she was alone. She believed no one would notice she'd stayed behind. What she didn't know was that someone was already watching her, silently, from the doorway. Donovan Hale, the owner of the mansion, stood in the shadows. A self-made millionaire, feared in boardrooms and admired in headlines, he was known for his discipline, his sharp mind, and his emotional distance. Staff whispered about his cold demeanor, his impossible standards, and the grief that had followed him since his wife's death 2 years earlier. As he watched Mara tremble, however, there was no anger on his face, no outrage. What crossed his expression instead was recognition, suspicion softened by sorrow, and a memory that cut deeper than he expected. If you believe stories about kindness, second chances, and unexpected mercy, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And tell us where you're watching from. Mara's journey to that moment began long before she ever set foot inside the Armand estate. Before the marble floors, the grand staircases, and the silent halls heavy with wealth and loss. She had once dreamed of becoming a nurse, driven by a simple desire to help people heal. But life doesn't always honor dreams. Her mother's sudden illness had swept through their lives like a storm, draining every saving they had. Hospital bills stacked higher each month, and with no father and no siblings to share the burden, Mara had been forced to abandon school and chase survival instead. Becoming a housekeeper wasn't a choice she celebrated, it was a necessity. And the position at the Hale estate, demanding as it was, paid just enough to keep her mother alive. Donovan Hale's reputation reached far beyond his fortune. He was known for his philanthropy, his sharp business instincts, and the emotional wall he'd built since losing his wife. The mansion reflected him perfectly, beautiful, orderly, and painfully empty. Rooms were decorated but untouched, laughter replaced by echoes. Staff members did their jobs efficiently, respectfully, and from a distance, knowing better than to seek warmth from a man frozen in grief. Donovan rarely spoke, rarely stayed home long, and rarely allowed himself to feel anything at all. The estate existed like a monument to a life that had ended too soon. Mara, however, moved through those halls differently. She worked quietly, but with care that went beyond duty. She dusted framed photographs of Mrs. Hale with reverence, as though acknowledging a presence still lingering there. She arranged fresh flowers, believing that small signs of life could soften even the coldest spaces. She never intruded, never crossed boundaries, yet something about her presence began to stand out. Donovan noticed how the rooms she cleaned felt warmer, how the silence shifted after she passed through. He told himself it meant nothing, but her quiet compassion stirred something long buried inside him. Everything changed the day Mara received the call that shattered her routine. Her neighbor's voice was frantic. Her mother had collapsed. Mara ran home, heart racing, only to find her mother unconscious, breathing shallowly. At the hospital, the words felt cruel and mechanical: immediate payment required. Without it, treatment would be delayed. The amount was impossible. Mara begged, pleaded, humiliated herself in ways she never thought she would. Policies didn't bend for desperation. That night, she sat beside her mother's bed, holding her hand, feeling helpless as fear tightened around her chest. The next morning, Mara returned to work numb with panic. Her body moved through familiar motions, cleaning, organizing, polishing, but her mind spiraled. Every second felt borrowed. Every thought ended the same way: I'm going to lose her. As lunchtime came and went, the pressure inside her grew unbearable. That was when she found herself standing outside Donovan's office, heart pounding, mind clouded. She told herself she was just checking something, just making sure everything was in order. She opened the door. The safe loomed in front of her, heavy and tempting, a symbol of solutions she didn't deserve. She didn't want to steal. She didn't see herself as that kind of person. But desperation blurs lines morality draws so clearly. That was when Donovan returned unexpectedly, intending only to retrieve documents before another meeting. From the doorway, he saw Mara, pale, shaking, writing meaningless numbers in the ledger as tears threatened to fall. He didn't interrupt her immediately. He watched. He saw fear, not greed; pain, not calculation. In that moment, he didn't see a criminal. He saw someone drowning, the same way he once had after losing everything that mattered to him. When he finally stepped forward, the sound of his presence was enough to break her. Mara froze, her heart dropping as she turned to face him. She expected shouting, dismissal, the police. Instead, Donovan calmly closed the safe and looked at her, not with fury, but with concern. He asked her what was wrong. Just that. No accusation, no judgment. The question alone was enough to shatter her resolve. She collapsed into tears, confessing everything, the illness, the bills, the fear, the moment of weakness that had brought her there. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She only asked him to understand. Donovan listened, truly listened. And then he made a choice that changed both their lives. He didn't fire her. He didn't report her. Instead, he arranged for her mother's treatment immediately, covering every bill anonymously. He gave Mara time off, support, and dignity. When she tried to refuse, overwhelmed with gratitude and shame, he told her a quiet truth. Once, someone had saved him when he was at his lowest. Helping her was his way of honoring that kindness. Weeks passed. Mara's mother recovered slowly, but steadily. When Mara returned to work, she carried herself differently, not lighter, but stronger, grateful, determined. Donovan noticed the change in himself too. The mansion no longer felt like a tomb. Laughter returned, softly at first, then more freely. By spring, the halls felt alive again, not because of wealth, but because compassion had taken root. Two broken people, connected by a moment of mercy, had found healing where they least expected it. If this story moved you, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Before you go, tell us, what would you have done if you were in Mara's place? In the end, Mara learned that even in our darkest moments, compassion still exists. And Donovan learned that kindness doesn't just save others, it has the power to rebuild ourselves too.